Hi everyone, I just wanted to check in and give you some very specific directions on how to complete the poetry response for this week. Poetry responses are different from essays because poetry responses do not require you to develop a full argument about the poem that you have read. Instead, you are just looking at some details from the poem and picking apart a few pieces of the poem. You can see right here, this view is a little bit different from what you see because this is the teacher view, but the poem for this week is called Those Winter Sundays, and I've attached a copy of the poem on this assignment right down here. And in addition, you can find a hard copy of this poem in your textbook. It is page 764 if you have the black textbook, and it is page 525 if you have the green textbook. You'll be typing this assignment in Course Sites. So just as a reminder, Course Sites is a separate website from Google. Course Sites looks like this, where you'll actually sign in and you'll have to put your information in to a search bar, if it will come up. Okay, it's got me. Okay, it's going to look like this. This is where you'll sign in, put your information, and get into Course Sites. In Course Sites, you'll have exactly 40 minutes to complete this assignment. However, since you have time to actually see the whole assignment beforehand, if you are stressed out about the 40-minute time limit, I guess you do have the ability to kind of do some pre-planning and go ahead and get your ideas together before you actually start writing it all down in Course Sites. But Course Sites is the location where I want you to turn your work in. For the poetry response guidelines, I do want to just go straight through them to make sure you've got all the information you need to succeed here. The reason we do poetry responses is largely because on the AP exam, you'll have 40 minutes to write a response to a poem. Now, on the AP exam, you'll have to actually make an argument about the poem. You won't be able to just talk about the theme or just talk about the tone or the mood. However, doing these practiced timed writings on poetry will go ahead and help you be in that mindset of having a limited time and having to really pick apart a poem very swiftly. So the first thing that you'll do for a poetry response is annotate. So you want to annotate the poem that you've been given. I'm okay if you want to print out your own copy of the poem, or if you want to just go ahead and use sticky notes to annotate in your textbook. Whatever option you choose is okay with me, but be sure you're annotating the poem first. However, since this is timed, you should only take about 10 minutes to annotate the poem. If you're taking 30 minutes to annotate the poem, that's only going to leave you 10 minutes to write, and 10 minutes will not be enough time. So limit yourself to just a quick 10-minute annotation of the poem. The first part of the poetry response is going to be a summary. You'll write one paragraph, and that's all I want. I do not want more than one paragraph. In that one paragraph, just give me a summary of the poem. What story is the poem telling? What are the big ideas the author is trying to get across? Let me know what literally happens in that poem. The second section of the poetry response is part 2, the theme. For this section, you are literally only writing one sentence to tell me what the theme is of the poem. And something important for us to remember is that theme is not just one word like love or family. Instead, theme is a lesson that is learned through the work that you are reading. So an example of a theme would be love can overcome life's biggest trials. That's a lesson that you can learn. However, if I just say love, that does not teach you anything. Love by itself is not a theme. You have to actually have a lesson that is learned. So for the theme of the poem, you're literally just writing one sentence. Third, you've got tone and mood. This is, again, one paragraph right here. So you start out, you write one paragraph for the summary, one sentence for the theme, and then one more paragraph for the tone and the mood. For the tone, you'll want to discuss how the author feels about his or her subject and how you know that the author feels the way they feel. For the mood, you're going to describe how the poem makes you feel. This is where you can get personal. This is where it's appropriate to talk about how readers feel as they engage with the poem. You want to remember that tone and mood are separate. Tone refers to how the author feels. Mood is how you, the reader, feels. And the way I like to remember those is that T in tone and T in the author, that's common. And then you have M in both mood and me. That's how I remember the difference between the two. The fourth and final part of the poetry response is the literary devices. You're going to want to identify 3 different literary devices that are used in the poem, and for each literary device, you're going to provide the definition. You can copy that definition straight from a dictionary, from a literary dictionary online, or maybe even from your Some Fundamentals of Poetry packet that I've provided for you. Also, you want to provide an example of where each literary device appears in the poem. So if it came from line 6, you want to cite line 6 in your response. And finally, you're going to explain how the literary device makes the poem more meaningful or how it improves the poem. So essentially, for each literary device, you're going to be writing at least 3 sentences to explain to me how that literary device functions in the poem. Right here are some suggestions for devices you might consider, but this list is just a list of suggestions. You can definitely move beyond this list. These are just some starting points. Down here, I've attached an example of a poetry response, and you can see that it's very brief. It's not even 2 full pages. Actually, there's a typo right here. This should be page 2. But you can see the summary, it's just a couple of sentences long. It is a full paragraph with a couple of references to the text. The theme, like I already said once, it should only be stated as 1 sentence. The tone and mood, again, that should be another full paragraph. And then the literary devices, right here, you can see they've been numbered 1, 2, and 3. The literary device has been bolded. And then following the literary device is a definition, an example of how it appears in the poem, and then an explanation of how that device makes the poem more effective or more meaningful. So these poetry responses do not have to be long. You can absolutely cover all the bases in 2 pages. However, if you're turning in a 1-page poetry response, you probably have not put in enough time and enough thought into the poem, because you can see here 1 page is not enough to get even to the literary devices in the example I've provided for you. I would strongly suggest reading through this example so that you can see exactly what I'm looking for, and also please follow the format of this example. I'd like you to put it in MLA format with all of your information up at the top with page numbers. My goodness, Google is being difficult today. And be sure that you give your poetry response a title. And yeah, this is the basis of how a poetry response works. Again, in course sites, I know that sometimes it's a little funky with your spacing and your paragraphs. So just do the very best that you can. If course sites will not let you bold, it's not a big deal. If course sites will not let you do the page number, that's not a big deal either. But definitely you want to set it up in MLA format and separate your paragraphs out so that I can tell where one idea begins and one idea ends. All right, if you have questions, please let me know. Thank you.